Hey everyone, this is Mike Dunn, and you are back with the Rethinking EDU podcast. I'm so happy you're here. This is our 49th episode. We're here, me and Dr. Courtney Russell Jr. sitting at the same table once again for our second ever in-person podcast recording. If you've made it to this podcast, you probably listened to episode 48, also with Doc, where he talked a little bit about his life, what brought him from Atlanta to medical school, and then to founding of A2H2 and We Up CBO and all the side hustles he's got going on. But we couldn't leave the conversation at that because we explored a little bit about how Doc's story kind of relates to learning and relates to school and what that means. But we didn't really explore what Doc's thoughts are about school. And especially as we're sitting here in this podcast trying to reimagine, rethink, re-envision, whatever you want to talk about when it comes to schools, I got to tap into Doc's brain. And so, Doc, before we get into this conversation, how are you feeling since our last conversation?
Oh, man. Feeling so good. I'm feeling energized. I feel really blessed to have these opportunities to speak my truth, and speak and just be as authentic as possible, which is how I love to live life, and my activism and everything I do. I just want to bare my soul with every interaction, and I feel like, and I thank you for allowing me to do that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Now listen, I want to get on the record here. Since you have a podcast, what are the chances, 0 being 0 and 100 being very likely, that I could end up on your podcast?
Oh, 100.
100?
Yeah.
Yo, okay, I'm holding you to that.
Yeah.
Y'all listeners, you heard it right here.
Yeah.
I'll make sure to drop a link to the Humanized podcast in our show notes, and you'll catch me there one of these seasons. It might be season 7 because I know y'all are planners and you got stuff worked out.
More than me. She's more than me. Yeah.
So just as a reminder, listeners, so here on Rethinking EDU, of course, we're always talking about people reimagining, re-envisioning schools. We're talking with Dr. Courtney Russell Jr., originally from Atlanta, here working with me at Eagle Rock School up in Estes Park. Doc works on our residential life team. He is also an Aspen house parent. House hose?
House.
You come to Eagle Rock to visit, you'll learn all about our house nomenclature here. But Doc, in our Doc, in our second part of this series, we want to specifically talk about school. Mm-hmm. And, one of the things we have kind of brushed alongside of in our last probably 20 episodes of Rethinking EDU is around equity in schools. Okay. Right? And let's just get right into that. Like, as you have transitioned out of the healthcare field, you're now here at Eagle Rock, right? Which is its own sort of unique experience. But when I mention equity in schools to you, what comes to your mind? What do you think of?
The lack of.
Okay. Yeah.
It does. It's non-existent.
Okay.
Which is exciting because now I have a purpose. And so, like, when you talk about equity in schools, it's like it's something that is not happening right now. Yeah.
Okay. And so when you first started realizing that to be true, was that through your own experience in school, or was that through maybe some other experiences and later on and what have you?
Later on, and just the education that I was receiving post med school on this activism walk, seeing just all of the systems that have been created to have a perpetual oppression and suppressive act.
Okay, so as you started becoming more aware, right, of the existing systems and their desire to perpetuate oppression, K-12 education comes into your mind.
Yes, through my own education process, I saw how education was inequitable.
I see. Okay. Because, that makes sense. Yeah.
Because it's like when you gain more, not like ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
And so when you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
So
it's like we were talking about in our previous episode, right? the education is supposed to be or should be a means to liberation,
Yeah.
right? Once you are liberated from your school experience, right, as James Baldwin talks about,
Wow.
he says that, right, the way that you can really start to understand learning and start to understand school is then the moment that you start to deconstruct and kind of tear down the model of school.
Yes.
Right.
100%.
I'm going to totally butcher that quote, but you get the
I
idea.
get it. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So you start to see school as sort of being just inequitable across the board.
Across the board, not because people aren't trying. Across the board, because the system is not allowing them to 100% be equitable. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like there are good individuals out there with great intentions, but the system as it is not built to really support every student. It's only built to support who is built to support.
Yeah. So let's take a maybe specific group of students and look at an equity issue within that group. Like, I want to think about students who maybe have poor access to healthcare. How does a school, from an equity perspective, not serve that student population? And the answer might be like very clear, but I still want to illuminate it just for our purposes of this conversation.
So if a student is living in a house lead, or if a student
like lead in the water,
lead in the water, or lead paint, like right there, their learning is at a deficit right there, and so I think how education is one of the systems that should look at every student they have in a holistic standpoint. That's why you have free lunches, because they're trying to address like malnutrition. Right. But if you're not addressing everything holistically, there's still deficits, which are going to impede on certain children. So if you come from an affluent background, you don't have to care about that. Just go to school and learn.
Right.
Right. And so those students may seem to be smarter. However, they don't have to live with the other situations. So if you're talking about a student who at home is dealing with the lights not being on, they're dealing with, again, no food in the cupboards, or they're dealing with mom and dad have to work so much so they have to take care of their siblings. Like, why would I care about homework? So it may not be that the student is not smart. Or what if the kid doesn't have Wi-Fi these days?
Sure. Yeah, it's a serious challenge. Yeah.
So like you in all of these deserts, whether it's a Wi-Fi desert or a food desert or a healthcare desert, all of these create a type of environment that's not like hospitable for learning. And so now you have an education piece. You see FFDs, these FFFF. It's like, how do you even begin to approach 1 + 1 = 2 when you're starving?
Yeah.
Like there's like people shooting outside your house, people selling crack in the hallway. Like you have to worry about individuals like mistreating you. Like the last thing you care about is doing your math homework.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so like now the next day comes and you come to class, hey Jimmy, have you done your homework? Nah. And the teacher's like, why would you not? See, you don't care about education. Right, so like now that's how it's inequitable for some.
And Jimmy in that situation is not that he doesn't care.
He can't care.
He can't care.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
That's the difference.
Yeah. So when we're thinking about that, I think healthcare is one that I think it's easy for me to imagine right now. And imagine for many of our listeners, it's easy for them to imagine. Many of our schools don't have school nurses there, let alone a doctor at a school, right?
Because the money is economics. You're going to pay a doctor to take care of this. Like, let me pay RN, let me pay NP. Let me pay those other individuals less. However, they're there once, twice a month, a week, because the priority in their mind is educate, but it's not a holistic way. If we were being honest, again, if you're talking about an affluent child from an affluent family, they have access to healthcare, so they can go to their pediatrician.
Yeah, that's right.
Instead of an individual in the inner city who is like, I don't have time to deal with Jimmy's asthma. Now, Jimmy can't breathe. He misses some school because he's in the emergency room. Like, it's all intertwined.
Yeah. So what you're suggesting is maybe not schools, but maybe we need to pay closer attention to some of those things.
It's
so
access.
Kids can learn.
It's access. It's everything is intertwined.
Yeah.
When you have poor access to housing, poor access to food, poor access to healthcare, mass incarceration is on. Like your community is ravaged by like being over policed. All that goes back into education because like,
and then kids can't learn.
Kids can't learn.
Yeah.
Because that's not a priority.
Yeah.
And so like you shouldn't have sold drugs. All right, cool. So you tell me, how else am I going to eat? Drugs sell.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Whether you like, is it right? That's not a question. It's right or wrong. It's like, is it right or wrong for my kid? For now, my mom needs to pay rent, and I got heroin in my backpack that I can make sure that we can have a place to live. That's a no-brainer.
It's a life or death situation.
It's a life. Yeah. So again, education is not a priority.
Sure.
When, ironically, education is the only way that you're gonna be able to be liberated.
Yeah.
Because we're living for right now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the areas that don't get enough attention. Like one of those areas you mentioned already is like community incarceration, right? Where volumes of community members are incarcerated, which leads to, let's say, multiple generations of individuals living in the same home, or leads to family disconnects, or leads to one person having to work 2-3 jobs in order to just keep the family afloat, right? So that's one, I think, good example. Well, one shit example of something that is happening. What are some other things that you think are maybe overlooked in the equity equation for schools?
I mean, we already talked about healthcare. You're talking about after school situations.
Yeah.
Because just because you have a brick and mortar and you're checking a box that a kid is not involved in truancy, like, what's next? Because after school, like you said, a parent has 3-4 jobs. Now, in those communities, are there a lot of after-school programs? Like, probably not. So now I got to entertain myself.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
Right. And so, like, again, everything is intertwined, but when you're more in the business of checking boxes instead of really getting results, this is what happens. And so, like, you're not looking at it at a holistic standpoint. You're looking at it as if they're isolated events. Education, they went to school from 8 to 3, and that's it. That's all they needed. Nah.
Right.
Like, that's why affluent communities, they have the kids in soccer, they have after school programs, they have tutors, because they can, though.
Yeah, I think about after school program too as like for me, I was in latchkey when I was growing up, right? So I would my dad was working an extra job and I would just stay after school pretty much every day until he got there, which oftentimes was like till 5:30, 6 p.m. Right? Our school, I think, in elementary school ends around 3:15. So I was there for 3+ hours after school every day. But it was a safe place. I knew my teachers. I knew those people that were there. One of the issues I see in terms of equity is that the people that are asked to staff after school programs are often the teachers themselves. Right? So now all of a sudden your teacher workday starts at 7:30 and goes until 6, 7 at night. And that's super problematic. Right?
See, what's coming to mind now is you get what you pay for. Right? Now, teachers aren't getting paid what they're worth. So now they're just doing stuff just to make it through the day, and now they have to do other things to supplement income. And teachers are living out of a car. There have been instances for that. Like, that's not okay. Because again, you asked equity in healthcare or equity in education. that's one of the things that's left out.
Yeah.
Teachers, competitiveness. Like, we're paying millions upon millions for sports
Sure.
figures,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I love sports. I love the NBA.
Yeah.
But I don't think the person that educates my child should be living in a car. Like, that goes to show you the priorities in our world, in our country.
Yeah.
Because teachers by far should be making $120,000, $200,000 a year.
Yeah, especially with lots of teachers being required to have master's degrees. You know, I would argue that teachers are one of the most overeducated, underpaid,
100%.
you know, groups of people
100%.
in the country.
100%.
Yeah.
No matter at what level. Like, even a first grade teacher should be getting $200,000 a year up until like K through 12. And if you're in the college area, yeah, now we can argue about 500,000, this and that.
Sure.
But like, a teacher should not be getting under the poverty line.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
I don't remember if I shared this example on this podcast. We've done a lot of episodes, but one of the first classroom experiences I ever had was in this small Catholic school in suburban Michigan, just outside Detroit.
Yeah.
And I was volunteering there because a friend of mine was the principal of the school, and he said, "Yeah, come along. Like, you know, we could, if you want some experience, I'd love to have your help in the classroom." So I'm in this classroom. You know, there's like maybe 15 kids. It's pretty small. The school is pretty small. Maybe only 7 teachers. So it was tiny, and it's a parochial school, Catholic school, so, you know, parents are paying tuition to go there. And so there's this amazing, what grade was I in? 4th grade teacher there.
Yeah.
And she was like dynamite, you know, and I was like, whoa, this is really cool. And so one day during lunch, I was in graduate school at the time, and I was thinking about studying education. And I said to her, so I don't want to talk about your paycheck if it makes you feel uncomfortable, but you know, this is a profession I'm thinking about going into, and I might want to teach in a Catholic school. Is this like a lucrative job? Are you able to, you know, have a living for yourself?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, last year I made $22,000 a year. And this was probably in like 2006.
Wow.
Okay, so not that long ago, right? 22,000. And she said, honestly, if my husband was not having the good job that he did have, she's like, there's no way that I could be able to teach at a place like this. And so afterwards, I didn't think much of it at the time. I was like, oh, that seems low, like, you know, whatever. But as I've gotten more into education and I've thought more about like what it means to live in an equitable way and to have a fair income, this person was delivering dynamite lessons to these 4th graders who were having an amazing educational experience, and she was making under the poverty line. Like, what? You know, it was absolutely mind-blowing to me. So I think what you're talking about here is that like fully funding teacher salaries is a critical aspect of equity in education.
Because no matter if you're an amazing teacher, you could be the Jordan of teachers.
Yeah.
If you get paid $20,000, like, you're gonna pull back, whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
Because like you're almost, if you're passionate about something, after a while, you run out of passion.
Yeah.
And you need to feel your worth.
Yeah. What I say often, teachers' hearts can only bleed so much, right? And after a while, you just end up dead.
Yeah.
Like almost literally.
Yeah.
To the point that we're seeing right now where teachers are leaving the profession in droves because of that. One thing that you and I talked about one time, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it, is around pollution and school communities and what kind of impact from your point of view that has on learning or just school in general.
I mean, you're talking about environmental racism, and you're talking about like pollution as far as where you live, the air you breathe, like the water you drink, how that affects you intellectually and your learning and your capacity to learn.
Yeah.
And so if you're breathing in bad air, if your home is full of cockroaches, and you get asthma and things of that nature, like, again, I don't care to learn when I can't breathe. I don't care to learn if I'm like my stomach is hurting because my water is infected. Like I can't. And so like people always think it's so simple as give them a school. It has to be, again, a holistic approach to true education. And I would rather not do anything versus do it in a way where it's not actually getting the results that on paper it's supposed to get.
Yeah.
And so like when you're talking about pollution, again, it always comes back to the equity piece, because if you're affluent, you're not going to be okay with your kids living next to a landfill and then and breathing in all of the fumes from that. But if you don't have a choice, but you need your kids to get some kind of education, you got to take that risk. Because you don't have the money. It always goes back to economics. You don't have to. You don't have the money to even have a voice.
Yeah, that's an exceptional challenge, and I think about it in terms of just before I left Philadelphia to come here to Eagle Rock, there were a bunch of schools that were uncovering asbestos in their environments, and having to spend multiple millions of dollars to try to repair buildings to remove asbestos. And we know that pollutant is absolutely toxic to pretty much anybody. Over the long term. But what I think that you're kind of pointing us toward in terms of equity comes down to school funding and community priorities. And I want to zero in on something you know a lot about, which would be healthcare in particular. And we talked about it a little at the beginning, but I'm wondering, healthcare is expensive in the United States, and having a nurse on salary at a school is expensive. Having a doctor on salary at a school would be very expensive. What do you think is a solution to try to mitigate those expenses? Like, how does a school?
It has to be it has to be a priority.
Like the first item on the budget. It
has to be a priority.
Okay.
Because you can't. There's no mitigating that. It's like asking, okay, are you going to mitigate lunch? They're like, there's people are like, no, they got to eat lunch, of course.
Sure.
But you're going to mitigate healthcare? See, this is what I'm saying. Like, you have to reimagine what a priority is. Recess is a priority because they just want to run kids and have a good. Okay, cool, sounds good. Healthcare should be a priority. Like, there's nothing. Either you're going to do it or you're not. Like, people talk too much around issues instead of saying, we're not going to do it, we're going to do this. Okay, so if you believe in equity, you should believe in everything that is going to allow the kid to learn. Healthcare, food. So there's no mitigating, there's no negotiating in those things. True, when you're true about a problem and an issue, there's certain things that's non-negotiable.
Right, you need to be able to provide a space for a kid to feel comfortable. You need to be able to provide that space, feel comfortable in all facets of their existence in that school.
100%.
Right? So they're not coming to school hungry, they're not coming to school unclothed, they're not coming to school without a decent night's rest.
There we go.
So what you're suggesting, though, is that, number one, make it a priority, but are there other things that you think in terms of are outside of the funding? Like, if we were to fully fund health initiatives within schools, what else would schools do to, in your point of view, to try to help people be healthier?
I mean, education, like health literacy.
What does that look like, do you think?
Not thinking that a child's too young to understand the importance of of nutrition.
Okay.
Right. Like making the funds available to have healthy foods in every school.
So you're suggesting like access to the actual food.
Yes.
But then also
education,
the knowledge around that.
Yes, and the deliverance. Like, those things should be pillars of every school.
I see. Okay.
Like, you're not going to say, you know what, we live in a bad neighborhood. Kids can bring guns to school.
Right. Right.
That's not negotiable.
Yeah.
Right? But just like we have to have a teacher, that's not negotiable. Kids just can't sit at school all day and chill all day. They have to have teachers.
Yeah.
That's not negotiable.
Yeah.
So it should not be negotiable if they should be healthy at school or access to healthcare at school.
And do you think that should be
You
a
spend
pillar of school?
You spend most of your time at school.
Okay.
Like,
so yes.
Yeah, 100%. Like you spend, so just as important as a teacher is,
yeah,
an educator should be, healthcare should be just as important.
Yeah.
Because if a kid is not healthy, if a kid is not eating, if a kid doesn't have access to healthcare, they cannot learn.
Yeah. And I assume when you're talking about healthcare, you're not only talking about physical care, but also mental health care.
There's no separation.
Yeah.
We separate that as human, like, mental health is separate.
Right.
There's so many diseases and health situations and mental health that start because the body and the brain are one.
Yeah. It always is like super annoying to me, right? When you're talking with people about their healthcare providers, and then all of a sudden you have to talk about your teeth and your eyes as like different providers.
No.
Like who once decided that eyes and teeth were different than the rest of your body?
Money.
Right.
Money.
Right. Money decides.
Money decides. Yeah.
So we're pairing like mental health care, physical health care, literacy and well-being kind of all together in one as a pillar of a school.
Yes. And making it so that if you have to pay an NP, good money, a doctor, it should be paid.
Yeah.
Because you pay healthcare administrators good money.
Sure, yeah. So does that maybe suggest that maybe schools and hospitals can become partners?
You have to.
Okay.
You have to. That's what I'm, my goal, if you ask me what I want to see in the world before I die, is a world where everyone has access to quality healthcare, not just healthcare.
Yeah.
Which would ironically take the money and move it to a better place, and so that healthcare would not be as burdened as it is, because everything wouldn't be an emergency then.
Yeah, that's right. It's almost like creating like this grassroots preventative healthcare space.
Yes.
Right. So like if we get into a conversation with a preschooler about eating healthy, and then we continue that conversation for potentially 13 more years through their K-12 experience.
Now we're addressing obesity. Now we're addressing pre-diabetes without even having to wait until they are obese. We are pre-diabetic. You can say now we almost cured that as a epidemic in the U.S.
And I wonder if that would also have like a kind of inverse effect on families too.
Oh my
so
God.
If your kid comes home and is like, hey, Courtney, we were talking about like how eating pizza every night is really bad. Can we choose to eat something else tonight? And all of a sudden your kid is telling you that, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe we should switch up our food option from this one to this one.
True. Or if you can't afford to switch with few options, one healthy meal is better than none.
Absolutely. Yes.
So if school is the thing about education is we act like individuals don't get big funds for public school. Right? Yeah. However, we are more concerned with sports programs.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Because that is, we want to be entertained more in America. So now if you got Jimmy, who is a great football star, like there's more money put into the program versus a math program or a STEM program.
Or in this case, right, our healthy eating program.
Yeah. So it's just reimagining the priorities of education to make it more of a liberatory priority versus just let's get it through.
Yeah, it is interesting that the more we talk about this, the more I think about like how many people in the United States right now feel held back in their life because of their health?
Oh, most.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, whether that's their physical well-being, their mental well-being, whether they're suffering from some sort of something, they feel like, well, I can't be the best version of myself because I am limited by my asthma, or I'm limited because I have to take these whatever kinds of pills, when so much of that, so much of our work could be done in schools to talk about what it means to live a healthy life and how much of that can be shared from young people with families.
Yeah.
Or when those young people have families, how that can trickle down.
Again, 100%. I agree. I mean, like I said, I use healthcare as an entry point, but education is what I'm passionate about because that's the only way that education truly saved my life. Mm-hmm. And mine was the education of the human body, but I learned so much more about humans and life and everything else more than I did with medicine. So I know that if individuals get true education from a very young age, like poverty would begin to be dismantled.
Yeah.
And so like when you think about the community we come from, we think only way to really make it out is for the majority of it, if you can rap, if you can play sports. Mm-hmm. Because it is a great, like if you're talented, you're pushed down that track, mm-hmm. and there's nothing wrong with that. Like if you can sing, if you can play ball, of course, 100%. But who is teaching you how to, like financial literacy and health literacy and being like the importance of like activism for your community and things of that nature, and so those things are not prioritized because if we start to do that, we start to address white supremacy.
Sure. Yeah. Because right at its heart, health literacy, financial literacy are liberatory, right? And once people feel healthy, are financially healthy, whatever that might be, all of a sudden you have a whole different
outlook is changing.
Field.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Options.
Yeah, that's
See,
right.
poverty is the state when you're devoid of options.
Yeah.
Right? And so
including in their hope.
Right?
Yes.
You have no hope for any options. This is what it is. This is how I'm going to die. This is life.
Yeah.
And so I got to make the best of it.
Yeah.
And so like when you start to think money, you have respect for the resource of money. Now you start to plan different. Now you think about your health. You're like, now I start to eat different because I got to live for my kids.
Yeah, and what I love that you just said is not that you're making more money. You have respect for the resource. And what that can provide access to. Yeah. The same thing with your health. Once you have respect for your personal health and an understanding of what it means for you as an individual to be healthy.
Yeah.
I think that there's one challenge that education kind of runs into is that it tries to kind of check all the boxes for everybody all at once. Right? This size meets 60% or 70% of the students' needs. But when you're talking about health, you're talking about such an individualized experience. We all know as adults the first thing that you have to do when you go into any sort of healthcare clinic is fill out a medical history, which is like who's got what when and as much as you can remember, share with us. Because that is such an important blueprint to look at for your individual healthcare plan, right? Yeah. Similarly, for young people, if we're able to teach young people about healthcare as a personal liberatory experience, then all of a sudden we're going to start to see different kinds of results.
Yeah,
I think.
How can I say it? When we study healthcare, it was not really created equitably. It's always like white people, the white man is a standard that we should go through. And this is why clinical medicine is so important, because if you just read a book and that's what you think made a doctor, you'll kill a lot of people. Because there's so many nuances to that. So now when you talk about education and a one size fits all model, that's for a rich white man's family.
Yeah.
So now if everyone had the access to everything that a rich white guy has, education will be great.
Sure, yeah.
Because everybody has access to healthcare, housing, food, clean air, everything. Well, everyone will be learning amazing.
Yeah. That's right.
Now, when you talk about poverty, that's a huge wrench. That's now you drop me down a whole bunch of rungs. So now it's like I don't know how to read. Not because I'm stupid, but I didn't have a chance to because I've been dodging bullets for the last 10 years of my life. So now I'm in high school and I'm reading at a 5th grade level.
Yeah.
And like, not because I'm dumb, but because like I had to stay alive.
Sure, yeah.
And so now is the guy, the white kid or the black rich kid who had everything access to, is he smarter than the black or brown or white kid who had to grow up in poverty? You can't say that.
Yeah, you can't say that. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's fascinating to think about systems existing with racial lens, right? And I think also fascinating to think about systems existing with a lens toward anti-poverty and anti-oppression. And I think about school a lot when it comes to that. School struggles already to be a catch-all for everything. And it's underfunded, right?
But how is it underfunded when we could find trillions of dollars to give to Ukraine?
Yes.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's priorities. We say, oh, education is important. Healthcare is important. We love people. Bro, come on, man.
Right. But if we go back to our initial premise of like, what is the purpose of education? To liberate, right?
Yeah.
If we really wanted a liberatory approach, or we really wanted a liberated constituency, we would have funded education 150 years ago.
100%.
Yeah.
But education is not for everybody, just like healthcare is not for everybody. Housing is not for everybody.
Right.
All these systems is not for everybody.
Right.
It's like mass incarceration is for some people.
Yes.
Poverty is for some people. It is what it is.
Yes.
If we really want to talk about it, I only know one way to address the issue is to look at it, the ugly, uncomfortable truth. The ugly, uncomfortable truth is systems have been created and it's not for you to feel bad about. It's for us to say it exists. Now what?
That's right. That's right. We have to start by saying exactly what you're saying. Who is the end user for education right now? Once we answer that question with full truthfulness, as much as we can, right? Then we start to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And start to understand what some of our issues really are.
100%.
So that gets me to my last kind of question I have for you is that you've been here at Eagle Rock now, 5 years, right? Yeah. And you've been out of medical school for 11 years, which is crazy to think about. And your life has made some significant shifts along the way, twists and turns, for sure. And I'm wondering, like, Eagle Rock is a really unique place. I've never been to a school like Eagle Rock.
Yeah.
And along your path, I assume that you haven't been to many schools like Eagle Rock.
Never.
So being here and being immersed in this environment, what are some of the things that this place has kind of taught you about school and made you maybe rethink about school?
Ooh, Eagle Rock. What keeps me coming back every year is potential. Like, there is I would argue to say there's not too many educational systems that have so much potential like Eagle Rock does. You know, and with the freedom to fail. It's almost like at Eagle Rock they welcome failure.
Right.
It's like saying, come here to fail so that you can learn how to be.
Yeah.
Not to be like this. It's like to be ... You can like insert what you want to be.
Yeah.
Like, so you have the place where you can not have to have a persona. Like where we come from, you got to be something. Mm-hmm. You can't be like that. That's not what we do. At Eagle Rock, it's like, what do you want to do? Go do that shit then.
Right.
Hey, it's like free of judgment. Yeah. To me, that's the beginning of a type of education that's liberatory. That's why I fucking love Eagle Rock. Mm-hmm. And I don't care. Every system has places and things that you can do to make it better.
Sure.
Right? But I had never, and even when I leave, I will always love Eagle Rock because they allowed me to feel a type of love from students that I had never felt in my life. Mm-hmm. Like I have access to individuals that I can be for them what I wish I would have had at 17 years old. Mm-hmm. And even so, it's just such a rarity to have so much potential. It keeps coming back to that, a potential for growth, a potential for learning, a potential to create. Whatever you want to do, you come to Eagle Rock and there's access. There's a way to do that. There's a path to do it.
Yeah.
And so that's honestly what I am in love with Eagle Rock for.
And how does that translate to other schools, though?
I mean, money, to be honest.
Yeah, Eagle Rock, we don't pretend to be underfunded at all.
That's it. You want to do something bad enough? Give me a month.
Yeah, that's right.
That is rare.
Yeah.
And so like the limitations and the barriers that may exist at other places, the barrier of finance may not exist here, which also gives you a different type of responsibility.
Yeah.
However, it's a huge blessing, and so like that's.
I think about some of the things that are like downplayed at Eagle Rock that are not downplayed in other schools. I jokingly talk about dress code at Eagle Rock, which for all your listeners out there doesn't exist.
No.
There's no dress code here. And what's funny about that is that students typically don't wear inappropriate things.
No.
They don't wear clothes that are too revealing. They dress comfortably pretty much all the time.
All the time.
And what's also interesting about that is that at Eagle Rock, you could wear the same outfit
every day,
every single day.
I do,
and
yes,
and no one cares.
No
one cares. And I'll tell you, my last school, we would have conversations about dress code, and it would just eat up hours of our school planning time, of our arguments, of what have you.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really connect all that well to you're talking about like funding of schools and like why it's important to fully fund schools and like what our financial backing allows us to do. But I think it's one of those things that I look at Eagle Rock very clearly, which is how much time do we talk about dress code here? Zero. What else do we talk about instead of dress code? Hundreds of other things that schools could get concerned with and really tackle that have nothing to do with dress code.
Yes.
Now, all the no excuses school listeners out there might be saying, well, how do you teach students to dress up like, there's important days to wear a suit and a tie and whatever. We do have those days at Eagle Rock, right? We have our presentations of learning at the end of every trimester, and students show up, and they look nice.
Very much so.
They look nice.
Yeah.
And that almost proves the point that...
when it's time to show up,
people show up.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So I think about that as one lesson I notice about Eagle Rock a lot, and something I appreciate. What's something else for you?
Again, it's agency. Mm-hmm. Like when you get to pick your own class.
Yeah.
Like and it's almost like staff have to audition for classes here.
Right.
Like the power is in the student, which it should be. Just like in the hospital, the power should be with the patient, and it's not.
Yeah.
Like, there's no agency for the most part. A good doctor creates that kind of environment, but it's not like the normal state.
Yeah, yeah.
And so at school, here at Eagle Rock, it's normal for us to get around, hey, please choose me. Please choose me.
Yeah, that's right.
Please
Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, where are you going to do that?
Yeah. For listeners, every trimester we pitch our classes to students
Come on.
as instructors, and it's like this whole thing that like you have to make your class sound interesting for students to take it. And if you don't have a class, there's not. Our director of curriculum doesn't exactly say, "Well, you don't have a class, you should think about your crappy pitch."
Yeah.
But I think everybody thinks that.
Yes.
Everybody's like
100%.
Everybody's like, well, my pitch must have been shit. I should probably work on that.
But that's how it should be, though.
Right.
We should be tap dancing, because if we don't have students here, we don't have a job.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So if I don't have a patient, I don't have a job. So it's my job to, like, essentially, you're an entertainer. Mm-hmm. If no one likes your music, you're not a singer. Like, if you suck at sports, no one's coming to the games.
Yeah, you're
like,
not going pro. Yeah.
That's what I'm like. So why do we feel like, you got to be here? You don't have to do anything.
Right.
It's our job as educators to make education sexy.
Sure. Yeah, I think I've talked early in this podcast series about the damning nature of compulsory education. That what happens if you say to families and students that your kid doesn't have to come to school if they don't want to, or if you don't want your kid to come to school, they don't have to. But right now it exists that our school, school's mandatory, right? And I think that you could end up with super challenges there. Some families and students would be like, okay, my kid's never going to go to school, right? But then some families and students would say, do you want to go to school? And then all of a sudden the kids that show up are a different kind of student, right?
Ironically, if you said that, I believe that most people would want to go to school. Given the right.
Yes.
Because, first off, what else the hell are you doing?
Right.
Also, if all your homeboys and homegirls in school,
then you're gonna go.
That's
to
the place to be.
Yeah, that's.
You know what I mean? And so now, if we make it shit, I don't know what you doing, but it's cool to be in school.
Yeah.
That's the mission I'm on. Yeah. I want to look like, Doc over there reading a book and talking shit. Like, you come to me, let's talk politics. You don't think I will because my hat to the back, or I'm wearing a whole hoodie and I'm breaking down legislation and this and that. Like, ooh, that shit was dope.
Yeah.
Oh, he read this book. He's referencing this. I got to do that.
Yeah,
that's education.
The whole game.
That's what it is. But if you make it you got to do it. See, freedom is a weird monster, though. Like, when you say you're free to do whatever you want to do, people most of the time do good shit.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
But when you say, no, you have to do it, now it's I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. Because as humans, we're always like, you ain't going to tell me what to do.
Sure.
You have to wear a mask.
Yeah.
I don't want to wear a mask. Right. Now you take away my freedom.
Right.
But if you just said, you know what, guys, this is what it is. You will die. COVID would have been a different thing. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't have been a freedom situation.
Yeah, not at all.
So that's a whole nother thing. But I equated to that because, with education, if you said you're free to be educated the way you want versus you got to do this 12 years, you got to graduate high school, you got to go to college.
Yeah.
Now it's all right. But if you said, you know what? All the kids in the neighborhood, they're reading books, they're going to school. Now it's you having a sparring, oh, did you hear that the stocks are up, this and that? And that's a third grade and a fourth grader talking like that. You're oh, shit. But that's what affluent communities do.
Sure.
They make it so that it's a cool thing.
It's a cool thing to do. Yeah.
My uncle is trading stocks, and he just gave my little 6-year-old some of this. Now, by the time they 15, 16, they set up for life.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the move.
Yeah. I had a student many years ago whose family member gifted them a bunch of cryptocurrency early on, and that student is doing just fine in their life nowadays. Yeah. Although, listeners don't take that as a endorsement to invest in the cryptocurrency market, which is acting a little funny these days.
Yeah.
But I think that this idea of making education non-compulsory is an interesting one. It's partially a psychological trick, but also partially a something that's happening, I think, today, particularly in rural and low-income communities. There's a lot of conversation that I've heard from educators in those communities who are saying that kids are coming to school and being like, "Why? This isn't cool. Why am I here?" Mm-hmm. And the thing that I need to do is go and make money for my family. The thing that I need to do is go and do this thing that is a priority in my life.
Because you haven't holistically addressed education.
That's right.
That's why it's I got to prioritize a life where I can live versus learning how to read. When learning how to read is going to elevate your life and allow you to thrive. So when you don't address it in a holistic way, you make a decision for someone else instead of giving them the freedom to choose education.
Yeah, that person is in poverty, right? Or experiencing poverty, and their choice has to be, I have to help my family come out of poverty.
Which continues poverty.
That's right. Or gets you incrementally above the poverty line.
But you're still in poverty because there's really not hope for you to thrive, because you can never be affluent without education.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying going to school, because I'm not saying a degree.
Right.
Let's please put that. You can be educated without a degree.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because there's some billionaires and millionaires that are not doctors, lawyers, businessmen, they're businessmen and women. However, so I'm not saying you got to go to college traditionally to be educated. I'm saying without education, you can never really escape poverty.
Yeah, that's right. Without education and learning and risk of some degree, it would be very hard. Luck.
I don't see it even happening with luck, because it's a mind. It's like poverty is more of a mindset, because you can have a lot of money and still live in poverty.
Sure.
Because your mindset is of such as I'm living like this, I'm gonna die like this, so I'm gonna make very poor decisions. And you can have millions upon millions of dollars and make poor decisions that have that's not good for your family, your legacy, your everything. And so you're still living in poverty.
Yeah.
And so don't equate me saying poverty as economic situation. Poverty is more of a mindset. And so if you live in a mindset that I don't have to care about you, I don't have to care about my health, I don't have to care about my family, I have $1 million, I'm gonna take care of me, I'm gonna disrespect, I'm gonna have sex when I want to, I'm not gonna wear condoms, I'm gonna be out here just going by just everything I want to do right now instead of thinking about a consequence.
Yeah.
You're in poverty.
Yeah.
And you're not educated on why that's deleterious to your life and the life of your family. Sure. And so that's poverty.
I get you.
Versus I'm poor.
Right. Yeah. It's very different.
Because you're poor, you can be in Harvard and be poor.
Sure, yeah.
But you're in poverty because
yeah. Well, I want to end on one note that I think is interesting. I hope listeners, for y'all to think about, and that I think about often here at Eagle Rock, is we've had a great 2-part conversation here, Doc, and I can't help but think about how important it is to get the right people in positions in schools to work with kids. If our head of school didn't happen to be hanging out at that Starbucks in Estes Park a bunch of times and notice this guy.
Oh, it wasn't the head of school.
Oh, okay.
It was just an employee. Yeah. It was,
if that employee wasn't
Yeah.
hanging out at the Starbucks, I think the story still stands, right?
Yeah.
If the employee wasn't hanging out at the Starbucks in Estes Park and be like, who is this guy? Sitting here with all his books and his 27 cups of coffee and his iPad, you would have never ended up here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the reason why you would have ended up here wasn't because it wasn't because you shouldn't be working with youth. You should be. And I hold that to be absolutely true every time I hear you talk to young people, I hear you engage in our community. But what I think that schools struggle with a lot often is getting the right people in the door, getting the right people in the space to build the community that they're looking to build. And we've spent a long time here at Eagle Rock in the last couple years trying to rehire people who we had a fairly large buyout from the American Honda Education Corporation, and a bunch of people left, and we've been rebuilding the staff one by one. And I just wonder what your thoughts are about why it's so important to get the right people for schools, to get the right people in the door.
It's hard to know the right person at an interview.
Yeah.
You know? But it's important to get the right people, because how do you win a championship with the wrong team? Right? How do you can't win a cup, you can't win a ring. What if I was trying to play in the NBA finals right now with a torn Achilles, or even in the NBA?
Yeah.
There's no way. And I was a starter.
Yeah.
There's no way we're going to even compete. So how do we compete for the minds and souls of students if we don't have the right personnel, the right team? And so I feel as though when you prioritize the right things, the right people will come. So if you prioritize, nothing else matters but educating our students in an authentic way. Because we deal with Black, mainly people of color or marginalized students, that doesn't mean the personnel has to be all Black people or all brown. No, it doesn't. But what it does mean is everyone has to be on the same accord when it comes to liberatory education.
Yeah.
And knowing that what is a non-negotiable. So you have to be very explicit when you're talking to people about coming to Eagle Rock, talking about the expectations, talking about the limitations, talking about what can be done, what's not available, what is here, and then let the chips fall where they may. And so there's always a transition period.
Sure.
There's always hard times.
Yeah.
But you would rather navigate hard times than have a lot of nothing. So you have every staff position filled, but hardly none of the staff is equipped to deal with the demographics that we have here. And now, who is being affected? Not the staff who's getting a paycheck.
Yeah.
The students.
Students, right.
And so it's just being unapologetic about the why. And then letting the chips fall where they may.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that a lot of schools struggle with that. And there's a couple of reasons I would argue that's the case. One of them right now that we're seeing is there's just lack of access to teachers, and teachers are leaving the profession in droves right now. If you doom scroll Twitter like I do, once a day, you could see all the people that are applied for my other non-teaching job today because I'm ready to leave education. And so it's hard for schools to be selective about who they bring in. But I would argue that if you don't get the right people on board, then
it comes back to economics though. If you're gonna pay somebody $20,000 nowadays after the pandemic to deal with what has come up now with education with the students, you're gonna lose everybody.
You're not gonna get anybody on the door.
So this is reimagining education financially too is gonna bring talent. It has to be competitive.
Yeah.
So if you posted a job and said, I'm gonna give my teachers 1st through 12th grade $120,000 a year,
sure,
yo.
You get all sorts of people applying for that job.
Now you have your pick. Oh, damn. You taught here. You did this. You did this. You did this. That's dope. Let's go. You will get but if you get $20,000, you might get somebody who is desperate, like dying. You know what I mean? Like, but then they don't care.
Yeah.
And again, who gets affected?
And they're going to leave in a year. Right, as soon as they get some more experience, get something else. Yeah.
You don't want this is not a part-time job.
No.
We're not fixing cars here.
No.
So it's like you have to be realistic about what's going on. If you have to hire less teachers and pay more, that's what you may have to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of moving parts to that.
A lot.
That are challenging.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. Like financially, this goes back maybe to the main theme that I've had throughout these entire, 49 episodes of this podcast is like, if you don't fix school funding, then you're not really going to fix much of anything.
No.
But I think what you're raising here in this last episode in particular is also teaching for liberation and liberatory education is not just about fully funding schools, but it's about the priorities.
Mm-hmm.
Set priorities straight, like health and wellness of young people, like health and wellness of staff.
There it is.
Then you're going to make some different kind of progress when it comes to community well-being, when it comes to addressing poverty, when it comes to addressing all of those
100%.
things. Listen, Doc, this has been a pleasure.
Man, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we usually end all of our previous episodes ends with like our guests get an opportunity to plug something cool. So I've already plugged.
Yeah, you plugged everything. Yeah,
We Up. I plugged
Humanize. Yeah, we're good.
Give us one other cool thing that maybe you're involved in, or someone else or something else you've been enjoying recently. Something that you'd like to plug for all of our listeners out there who are like, yo, this Courtney Russell Jr. guy, he's pretty cool. I'll check him out. What else should they check out?
I mean, they should check out Reimagine EDU.
Wait.
Yeah, you like that? Yeah, threw it back on you.
That's
yeah.
Rethinking. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, so I messed it up, y'all. No, man, I messed it up. To be honest, man, you got everything that I'm doing. I'm really blessed to be at a stage in my life where I can have these platforms and these opportunities to speak to other brilliant minds like yourself and talk openly and candidly about these kind of systems, with education being one and healthcare being one we spoke on primarily with both of these episodes. And so, I mean, we already did it. My for-profit, my non-profit, my podcast. I think that's like that's taking all my time these days. That's it.
What's one book that you've been reading recently? That you
that's it.
Plug?
Yeah. I'm reading them 4, but Fatal Invention.
Okay.
It's talking about how race is an invention that's created here in the U.S. And so, like, I'm really loving that book. I just finished Medical Apartheid. I'm reading 1619 over again.
Yeah, it's a lot to get in there.
Yeah, so like I try to go through 4 books a month, because if I'm speaking on these kind of things, I need to know, and so because I'm fighting for a culture and I got to show up every time and I take it really serious. Like this wasn't a planned episode and I'm talking to you, so I was nervous, so I had to come right with education. I just finished a book by Bell Hooks called Teaching to Transgress. And it was amazing. It was amazing. Like she did that. And so like it's a Bible, and like it was amazing. And so like those are the books that I've touched recently. So,
that's awesome. Yeah, and listeners, we hope that you've loved these couple of episodes, and check back. Sneak peek that we've got our 50th episode coming up. I got a couple announcements going on with that episode, so make sure you keep listening through the 50th episode. And if you're super stoked about this content and about the rest of our content that we produce on Rethinking EDU, you can head on over to our Patreon page. You can hit up It's patreon.com/rethinkingedu. You can also check out our newly minted newsletter called the Rethinking EDU Thought Thread. That's rethinkingedu.substack.com, or you can check us out at rethinkingedu.co, where you can find links to all those things. Listeners, Doc, it's been a pleasure, and as always, keep rethinking EDU. Thanks.
Peace.